There we go. That should do it. Simon, are we okay on that end?
Looking good.
Thank you. All right, so there it is. For today, I actually want to talk about a little bit more about your assignment. And of course, that relates very closely, your assignment 2, which relates very closely to the theory we've been dealing with in the last 2 weeks. And hopefully you've watched all those videos. They are definitely available on ECI. And so this would be a third in a series of 3 lectures. And of course, the first and the second one would be pre-recorded videos that you need to go watch, which many of you have done. Thank you very much. Also then on assignment 1, I was quite pleased with the response. I saw there's about 90% of students, just slightly over that handed in that assignment 1. And it was group work, and so quite a bit of work went into that. And so I'm quite happy with what you guys responded with there. So for today then, we'll get going. At the very beginning, I'm just going to give us a breakdown of what we can expect in the next couple of weeks. And then we'll get going on a bit of theory, and right at the end, we'll take a couple of questions. Right, so there's the first one that I've mentioned in week 8. Your assignment 1 was due, and it's all done now. Coming up this Saturday, we can see the 23rd of May. The closing there would be on the Saturday evening at 12 or just before. So please pay attention to that, get it done. That is an individual essay. And even after this live event tonight, you should walk away with quite a few more ideas that you can then incorporate into your essay writing. Right, this is where we are now, the live stream. So let's take a quick look at the future as we go ahead. In week 10, it'll be a Moodle week, and there will be, as always, a whole bunch of preparation tasks laid out for you there. The focus will be on units 3.1 and 3.2 as per your reading pacer. So you will see, I think it was under week 5 that I made available your reading pacer for you. And then again this week, in week 9, it's downloadable on ECI. So take a look at that reading pacer. It tells you exactly in terms of your prescribed literature what to read in preparation. But of course, you also need to attend all the events and look at the videos for more information. Week 11 will be another Moodle week, and that will also be the week in which we write our online test. The idea there will be that it will open at 6 o'clock in the evening on Friday, and it will close again on the Saturday at 6 o'clock. That will be your window to engage with that test. It will be for 50 marks, and within that window, the moment you start, it'll give you 75 minutes to engage with that multiple choice questions, 50 of them, and it will be on unit 1, 2, and I've also decided to incorporate unit 3.1 and 3.2. All right, by that stage, we would have covered that in our Moodle week, which is next week, and you should be well prepared for that. I will also upload a bit of a summary on the lectures we've had early next week for you. A couple of slides. It won't be a voice over PowerPoint. It will have a summary of the theories or revision, basically, that you can take a look at. Just a word of caution on that, don't solely rely on that. You have to do the reading. Okay. Then week 12, we'll have a live lecture via Zoom, and that will be on unit 3.3 on experiential and dialogical learning. And so I'm very much looking forward to that one. And then week 13 will be a live lecture again. At that point, we'll probably do a bit of revision again. And also whatever we don't finish for unit 3.3 will go to week 13, it's live lecture. And then your final online test 2 will be on the 19th and the 20th of June, working in much the same way as the online test number 1. However, in that case, it'll be longer questions, and it'll be an open book test that you will have to write, as memory serves, it's 3 essay questions that you'll be confronted with there. And you have to download the paper and then write the essays, engage with that paper, and upload it again. All right, so that's all the units we've done so far. Then at that point, that will be incorporated into that. Unit 1, Unit 2, and Unit 3 for 50 marks again. Week 14 will be our closing week, and we will look at right at the beginning where we started, the concept of life orientation itself, and we will also look ahead at TLOF702. So look out for that video lecture. It's going to actually place all the things we've been doing into a lot of perspective. So it's really good if you engage with that one right till the end. There will also be your final involvement tracker there in week number 14. So yeah, that's just a quick summary of all the way that we've come and the way ahead. Yeah, and so I'm looking forward to seeing all of you on ECI as we draw this module to a close. Right, so just as a reminder, this is what is due this Saturday. So first of all, assignment 1 is done. That's great to know. That was for 20%. Your assignment 2 will be for 25%. And I've already had some queries around the length. I've said between 800 to 1,000 word academic essay written by just yourself. No group work this time, it's an individual assignment. I will be lenient up into 1,200 words, but after that, I'm going to have to seriously think of penalizing you. So please stay within that or as close as possible to that target word count as you can of 1,000 words. But I won't be silly and penalize you if you go over slightly, but please keep that in mind. It can't be too lengthy. Of course, the theme then, teaching of life orientation and the FET phase for the facilitation and development of individual, school, and community health. All right, so very important to look at your assessment guide for this one. I have uploaded a video briefing for you to help you with that assignment, number 2. But also, you will really miss out if you don't go and take a look at your assessment guide to guide you with respect to this assignment 2 in particular. And also, it's going to be an assignment that you hand in via ECI and make use of a Turnitin portal. So that gets explained there in your assessment guide, page 5, if memory serves. So you have to take a look at that to help you. Also, I'm referring you to your Van Heerden Pieterse resource that actually unpacks academic essay writing quite nicely on page 192 to 199. And so you can actually take a look at that life skills resource yourself for your own life skills and your own life skills development to help you with that. And of course, it's also content that you might share with your learners in future. All right, let's take a very brief look at this assignment then, as I promised. So basically, it's about the theme there, the teaching of life orientation and the FET phase for the facilitation and development. And it's important to note these 3 levels: individual, school, and community health. All right, so you would have to unpack that, those 3 levels quite carefully. Also, if you can look there at the bottom of my current slide, the question that can guide us in this essay writing and that essentially you need to analyze and answer is, can the teaching of life orientation to grade 10, 11, and 12 learners be used to facilitate, support, and encourage healthy and effective growth and overall development at an individual, school, and community level? So of course, as life orientation teachers, we might argue yes, but how? So that's really the part that you need to unpack, is how can this be done? And then as a further guide, in your assessment guide, on page 10, you will see that I've asked you to address basically 6 aspects of 6 bullets, if you will. The overall purpose of teaching life orientation and the FET phase, and we've looked at that before. And we've had some involvement trackers on that, and we've had lots of conversation on that. So by now you should be more than ready to write a really strong introductory paragraph there. Of course, the caps then delineate certain topics in terms of for that overall purpose. And you have to explain how those topics then relate to the overall purpose of it. And then this is really, we know in reality, closely influenced by problems and challenges to the healthy, effective development of learners in the contemporary South African school and community. And especially in this chapter on health, we focused a lot on that. So go take a look at those previous lectures of mine that's recorded and available there. And so that will give you a lot of information. Also later in this lecture, I will also highlight a few ideas there for you. And then the concept of health as it relates to the life orientation and life skills facilitation in the context of community health or developing healthy communities. All right, so we have a very particular way of looking at health and a particular way of defining it in life orientation. And then, of course, that work you will find in NEL. I will also refer to this later on. And then any relevant literature and theories that could guide the implementation of life orientation to facilitate individual, school, and community health is fair game. You just need to unpack. A few theories springs to mind here, but I will leave that up to you. We've covered quite a few, especially under Unit 1. We've covered quite a few theories, and I've also introduced you in that life skills or skills for health document that I made available. There's some really good information there. Also take a look at the briefing I've done for you on this assignment 2 essay. There's quite a bit of information and extra resources that you can refer to, that you can make use of. All right, in the final analysis there in your essay, you need to speak about practical advice, teaching approaches, methods, and strategies that can be used by your life orientation teachers to facilitate individual, school, and community health. So ultimately, you need to be very practical in the advice that you give after sort of referring to the necessary theory. All right. Also here at the bottom, once again, don't forget to take a look at that Van Heerden Pieterse chapter 16 to guide your essay preparation. And also the Van Heerden Pieterse has some interesting chapters on health as well. Relationships, relationship health, addiction, and HIV and AIDS and sexual health, all of those spring to mind. And those are all fair game to build into your essay. So you should have more than enough resources that you can rely on. Also, in terms of the rubric, you will find it in your assessment guide. You just need to download it. So enough said there. All right, so ultimately we're still dealing with this very same question in Unit 2 about how we can facilitate, mediate, and support. And I've unpacked those particular concepts before in the previous lectures. Facilitation and mediation, and this idea of support. I'm tempted to say proactive support that we offer to FET learners in the life orientation classroom. And it's all about this idea of prevention is better than cure, right? So rather than trying to help learners after the fact, although that might be necessary, in the life orientation class, the main focus is this proactive support that we offer. And how do we offer this support? We facilitate, which basically means we make it easier for them. And also we mediate. It means we give them the adequate knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes needed to support them. All right, then to get a bit closer to the actual chapter and basically an answer to the question we've asked is this idea. I like this statement by Hay where he says, healthy living has become a critical slogan to try and steer South Africans away from the abyss of physical and mental ill health. All right. And so this is your link between the CAPS and, of course, the facilitation of healthy development. Now, I just drew a little diagram there for you on the right-hand side of the screen. And the temptation with this essay would really be to make the whole essay about COVID-19. So I would really caution against that, because remember, we are dealing with a broader concept here. Although you might want to focus a section of your essay on COVID-19. Much like HIV, it's a very particular instance of where students, life orientation teachers need to play a particularly important role. But that does not mean that that's the whole of the role. Okay, so in terms of our healthy living, the challenges we can see three broad categories that the challenges that learners are faced with would fall in. And so COVID-19 would fall into that category of poor physical health. But of course, there's also the aspect of poor mental health, and then the idea of poor living conditions, or we might say contextual factors. Later on, I'm going to refer back to the work of Bronfenbrenner again, and then we will see how all these three actually interact and interplay. All right, so I've also shared this concept with you, the health promoting school, or developing health promoting schools in South Africa. And just keep an eye out as we go through the lockdown and reopening of schools. We will definitely see these various facets playing out in the whole educational sector. So this is obviously with a focus on the life orientation teachers and life orientation classroom, but this would be equally true for schools in general. Right, so the preventing of communicable diseases, of which we know that the coronavirus is one. We will and have already seen quite a bit of policy development related to that. Then if we go around that diagram, we see health education. That's of course where the teachers really come in, and all the various precautions they now have to take. And hopefully our life orientation teachers will be able to take a lead in all that. I believe they need to. So health education as promoters of a healthy lifestyle. And then community involvement, so the parents are definitely involved with all of this. Nutrition, that's an ongoing challenge. And of course, ultimately the learner and educator involvement in health promotion. And what's just come up though on the screen, the 6 risk areas in South African schools of particular interest. This is the part that have been researched and based on what we see in NEL, or HAY as he describes it in NEL. The idea of inadequate physical activity, poor nutrition, unhealthy physical environment, alcohol and drug use or abuse, injuries and violence, and risky sexual behavior. Those are 6 particular challenges that the life orientation teacher needs to address, in many ways quite directly. Right, then I've also referred you in the past, I'm just going to go through it really quickly, the World Health Organization's idea of what a health promoting school will look like or will focus on, and especially that idea of caring for oneself and others. And I also shared earlier with you guys this idea of care, making healthy decisions and taking control over life circumstances, creating conditions that are conducive to health, building capacities for peace, shelter, education, food, and the list goes on, preventing leading causes of death, disease, and disability. And there's your whole list, and of course now we can add corona to that list of leading diseases that we need to cater for. Last but not least, influencing health-related behaviors. And that's that idea of the knowledge, beliefs, skills, attitudes, and values that we've been focusing on throughout our module. All right, I've also shared with you the socio-spiritual model, and basically this idea of balance. So we can see that the idea is that how we would define health in the life orientation classroom, as I referred to earlier, is that it would cut across 4 domains. So we need to cater for the biological domain, the psychological domain, the social domain, and then the spiritual domain. And yeah, if you need more detail on that, go watch the previous lecture. Okay, I'll hold here for a little bit as well. Just on some key aspects of the model. So the key aspect that I've been referring to over and over again was the prevention, and then unhealthy habits or healthy habits, or the development of knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes that will translate into habits, the influencing of healthy behaviors or health behaviors, the idea of relaxation, and finally the idea of balance. And then on the right-hand side there, we can see that a simple way of thinking about this model is just to say it's the body, mind, connection, and spirit. That's those 4 domains. And then the central idea is that all these need to remain in balance. Healthy body, healthy mind, as the Greeks used to say. Right, I see it's hidden here a little bit, but you do have the original for this as well, so it shouldn't be a problem. I'm just referring here again to Van Heerden Petersen, chapter 16, page 192 to 199, and it actually explains the structure of your assignment, which is, it aligns just about 100% with our expectations if you go read your assessment guide, and then the process and stages of your assignment development. So, you know, hopefully you've been in these processes, and at the current moment, you are just busy putting your assignment in its final form, and then finally you will submit it there to your Turnitin portal. And you will find this in week 9, of course. All right. So I think that's a mouthful in terms of revision. So, and I see we have quite a bit of time left still, 20 minutes or so. So what I'm going to do is, there is that very interesting Bronfenbrenner quote that I've referred to before. And it's basically this idea that humans would be active producers of their own development. So this idea of a reciprocal influence is very important. So our environment will influence us, but then we turn around and we influence our environment right back. So, you know, this idea that when learners return to school, for instance, for this coronavirus, there would be definitely changes in behavior needed to curb the spread of the virus. So in that context, and related to that Bronfenbrenner quote, which we know is a description of what he's calling the bioecological perspective, right? And I'm asking the following question. So if you look right at the bottom of my slide there, I'm saying you can raise your hand to respond. So Simon, if you can help me here, when they actually write responses, or you can just raise your hand and we can promote you, and you can see if you can answer this question or make a contribution to the answer of this question, because it's a very broad question. So the question is, how does our behaviors relate to our life skills, knowledge, values, and attitudes and beliefs influence the results and long-term outcomes we might produce in terms of this COVID-19 virus? So that question again, how does our behaviors related to our life skills, knowledge, values, attitudes, and beliefs influence the results and long-term outcomes we might produce? Now, these long-term outcomes, I'm not using it in the sense of defined in the caps. I'm using it in a more general sense. You know, what will happen in the long run? All right. And you can focus there in your response specifically to the skills, knowledge, values, attitudes, and beliefs, and how they need to maybe change and evolve. Yeah, no, I think that's enough said. So you can respond on the chat, or you can raise your hand. If you're looking for it, I'm forever looking which button I need to push. And so you can just hover at the bottom of your screen, and you will find the chat or the space to raise your hand. Then you can ask to be promoted as a panelist if you raise your hand.
Hanno, we've had a request on YouTube from Anonymous. Would you be able to put the question back up on the screen, please?
Can do.
Thank
I'll leave it there for a little bit. Let's give people a chance to engage with this. So I'll be a little bit patient while people figure out how to do the technology thing and respond via the technology. I really want us for today to have an opportunity to have some interaction if we can. So if somebody's out there listening, this is your chance to interact and ask questions. I can talk to you. Simon will help put us in contact, and then you can, yeah, you can also, you don't have to give a final answer to this. It's a very open-ended question. So I was hoping we could have a bit of a conversation around it.
To our audience watching, just to recap, there are 3 ways that you can interact. If you'd like to, you can raise your hand, and that will give us an indication that you'd like to interact. We can either allow you to chat to us directly by using your microphone. If you'd like to, we can also have you turn your video on. It's always nice to see a smiling face. Otherwise, there is the chat room that is available. And Hanno, we've already had a very good answer submitted in the chat. So when you're ready to start reviewing answers and taking input, we can start there. But students, if you want to make use of the chat room, please feel free. Otherwise, there is a very nice Q&A feature available, a question and answer feature. And the question and answer feature will allow you additionally to post your feedback or your input anonymously. So if you'd like to do so anonymously, the Q&A feature will allow you to do so.
Right, so yeah, thank you, Megan. I've actually taken a look at your assignment sometime yesterday and today, even later during the course of the day. I see you put your name there. I hope you don't mind me using it. Yeah, so here's a response to that question one can think about. Megan is saying our behaviors are directly influenced by our knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes and beliefs. Yeah, no, that can sometimes be a bone of contention to some psychologists, so that we like arguing, back and forth on that one. But I would definitely agree with that statement. And thinking back to the rational emotive behavioral theory that I've addressed with you guys, I can't remember, it's probably around lecture 3 somewhere. So it is there, you can go and find it. That's definitely the theory, that so I've called it the ABC theory, if you remember. Now, the activating event, the beliefs about that event, and then the consequences we get. And then actually that beliefs in the way that Albert Ellis defines it under rational emotive behavioral theory would definitely come very close to this idea of what we know, what we can do, and what we value, and ultimately our attitudes towards something. Yeah, so to share a little bit more, so I can agree with that, Megan. So she says, for example, someone's decision to go into public spaces without a mask and without sanitizing would be a behavior that is influenced by their attitude towards COVID. Well put, can't say it any better than that. A person who is dealing with economic and financial stress during lockdown may value the need to earn a living. And so their behavior would be to try and work during lockdown, despite the risk of contracting COVID-19. That's a beautiful answer, Megan. Thank you so much for sharing that and being brave and taking the opportunity. I do appreciate that. Right, Simon, do we have anybody putting their hands up to maybe be promoted and speak to us? Or are they being a little bit shy?
I think we're a little shy this evening, Hanno. Let's see. Give our students a chance.
Yeah, of course, this online teaching is something to get used to. Speaking of behaviors and a different kind of behavior, So yeah, we should just try it and see how it works. Hence me putting this out there today. Aha, we just had another response there from Kirsten uh, Lemon Ward, right? To all panelists. Right, Kirsten is saying some people may receive false information on how to combat the COVID-19 virus and then take this advice and then spread the virus or then cause more harm to themselves than good, such as information given to the American public by their president. Quite a, quite a contentious statement there, but I'm afraid I would have to agree with that one because who knows? And certainly the public outspokenness around some of this hasn't always been helpful. I think that has to be acknowledged. Yeah, so misinformation, very, very important. And you will remember in some of my previous lectures, I've really taken life orientation teachers to task there to say sometimes we speak, the classic example for me would be self-concept. So it's fair to say that everybody has a general sense of that, what that might mean to have a self-concept, or a general sense of what it means to be healthy. But I think in terms of being a specialist, the life orientation teachers, and possibly in the current conditions, all teachers, need to be the ones that are armed with the correct, accurate, or most accurate knowledge. So we do know that science has this tendency to grow and evolve. The classic example there would be, at one point in history, we used to think that the Earth is the center of the universe. But we no longer believe that to be true. In fact, we know it to be untrue. And so there is that aspect of it, the development of science. And of course, this being a newly identified virus, we might actually, as we go, uncover all sorts of conceptions and misconceptions. But then I think that's where I've referred us for now to there are probably many organizations we can look at. But the authority is generally considered to be the World Health Organization. And from the very beginning, I've referred you to them as the specialist to be sharing the latest and the newest scientifically accepted information. And I must say, I'm quite proud of our president there, taking the lead from the scientist in all this, because of course, politics isn't quite science, although one can study political science, I guess, but he's definitely balanced the two quite nicely in terms of saying that he'll be guided by, the latest data becoming available and then make the best decision as we go through the process. So, yeah, that was quite, in Afrikaans, we would say it's a riem onder die hart. It's a very supportive thing that we can acknowledge that he's willing to go that route. Yeah, so thank you for that comment, Kirsten. That's very useful. Anybody else there? Somebody wanting to be brave? You don't want to share your face? You don't want to come onto video with me? If you raise your hand, I'm sure Simon can promote you quite easily.
I know we've had an anonymous comment here on YouTube, and I quote, "A person's knowledge, values, and beliefs inform their attitudes and skills, but what we consistently do, our behaviors, are what define us both within society and within our own private mental world."
Thank you for that, Anonymous. Yeah, I would be quite proud to put my name to that observation. But fine, it's up to you. It's your choice. Yes, that's exactly what I was alluding to, that psychologists aren't really of one mind always. The classic way of phrasing that would be, especially in ethics, we would say sometimes we know better, but we don't do better. So sometimes if we have a certain belief and we have a certain set of knowledge, why do we ignore that and still behave, it's mostly put under the banner of unethical behavior. So if we know better, why don't we adopt our behavior? And I guess that's just human nature. And I reckon that's where things like emotion often plays a role. And if you look at the school of psychology called psychoanalysis, that's often the unconscious drives. Whether you would agree with that as a general statement, I like, I've made I haven't really hidden the fact that I'm a fan of the rational emotive behavioral theories, and even Gestalt psychology. But maybe the psychoanalysts have a point there. We have to acknowledge that sometimes we do the irrational thing. So that is a good question. And so I would agree with that. But ultimately, it defines us in the world is how we behave, because that's obviously what unless somebody knows you really, really well, that's what they observe. They do see your behaviors. And then they would ask the question, if this lady or gentleman believes X, why do they act in a different way? If you say you respect other people's space and their lives, why don't you wear your mask? Or, why don't you turn your head away when you cough in public? Generally we would refer to that as just good manners, which I guess is one thing. But in the current situation, obviously, there can be much more dire consequences. So it becomes really, really important. A much more standardized way of behaving. Which certainly to me seems quite weird sometimes. Even tonight I'm sitting here in my own in my own office, talking to you guys, which isn't really the convention. But yeah, we value education and learning, and we want to offer you guys this opportunity to interact. So here we go. We're making use of the technology to make that happen. Anybody else out there? We can give it a couple of more minutes, because if that's it, maybe we can move on. Right, I just saw that pop up from Megan. Addiction could play a role. So this is a response to that question by Megan. She's saying addiction could play a role. For example, smokers are aware of the health implication of this habit. During COVID-19 lockdown, they do not have legal access to buying cigarettes, and they are most probably fully aware of proper safety precautions, but due to pull of their addiction, but due to the pull of their addiction, they will go out and seek illicit cigarettes. In other words, addiction could override our good values, beliefs, and knowledge to impact our behavior. Absolutely. So in that case, it's a chemical addiction, although addictive behavior is quite interesting to take a look at, because it could also have a psychological aspect to it, and then the fact that you almost condition yourself into a habit. Then, of course, the nicotine in the cigarettes we know is highly addictive. So that would actually then, and the same for other addictions and other addictive behaviors. There is that chemical component which is very difficult to cater for, which is really sad. I mean, I must say some of the saddest case studies I can think back to in my 17, 18 year career in schools is definitely where learners have messed around with dangerous things, and then have had to fight addiction in the end. And the prognosis for an addict, a person that is really diagnosed with the addiction, isn't good. It's the percentage of people that recover from that and the high percentage of relapse actually shows that definitely prevention would be the way to go here. And it's something really, really important to note as a life orientation teacher. I used to have this exercise with my life orientation learners where I used to say, do drug addicts have values? Yeah, they're people as well. If you're Sorry, do drug dealers have values? That was the question. And so the question is, do they? So in the objective sense, we can say maybe not the same values as us, but they do have values. It's just they value different things. Basically, they value profit over the lives of people. Plain and simple, in my mind. Some of you guys might disagree with that, but certainly from my sense, having worked in the field for quite a substantial time, for whatever reason, there might be an economic drive, the drive to make money, but certainly they do value things differently, and they value people differently, and therefore, if you're a drug dealer, clearly you have no problem selling poison to people, which is always very sad. Right, so we have another post here by Eleanor. Again, it seems like this is the preferred mode of communication, so I hope this is helpful to you. Right, so Eleanor is saying, it's been an interesting observation for me as I have looked at KZN in level 4. The exercise time has mostly become a social time for friends, where caution or fear may have stopped people mixing in the beginning, has now seen people taking more risks due to social isolation, as they crave relationships and interaction. The way of the world has changed and the balance has shifted. Yeah, most certainly. That sense of belonging to a group or just some form of contact that we crave. So yeah, even for ourselves, we've had to change our mode of contact to be online, which of course is not quite the same as having a face-to-face conversation, but then the risky aspect. So there's that built-in a human factor or need, I think is what you're referring to there, Eleanor, the need to interact with others. And theories abound actually saying that is one of the major aspects that make human beings human. And therefore, basically risking, I guess, illegal activity, which seems, pre-corona, we would have found it really ridiculous to say you're taking a risk to go and talk to other people while you should be jogging. Apparently that's your observation. I suppose as long as one can have social distancing, some of that might be okay, so it's not necessarily a crime. However, it's clearly risky behavior. So hence that observation. So thank you, Eleanor. That's a very interesting one as well. In terms of our original question that I was asking, how have our knowledge, skills, values, and attitudes, how will that influence the outcomes we get? And I think we've certainly seen in countries where governments were late to respond, or where possibly the citizens didn't respond positively enough, quick enough in terms of the lockdown period, that for all sorts of reasons, I suppose economical being the biggest one, the biggest driver there possibly of behavior, that the virus has spread quite quickly. So this is a very interesting case study. In fact, I think this whole corona lockdown and then the process of reopening and the various levels will be interesting as a social scientist, which I believe life orientation teachers need to be ultimately, be social scientists. So through a scientific lens, we try and study, hopefully somewhat objectively, the happenings in the world, the phenomena in the world, of which this is one. The response of a government to this health crisis, or defined as a pandemic. Right, Simon, do we have any hands going up or any other forums that's active at the moment?
No, Hanno, that's been the sum total of our interaction thus far.
All right, so maybe not that many people, but definitely quite useful and quite exciting. Is certainly the most interactive we've had it to this point. So that's really nice. So my thanks to Megan and Eleanor for interacting like that. Yeah, all I want to say at this point, really, we've said a lot tonight, but basically, in terms of your essay, good luck. Please submit it in time. And then remember, there is that opportunity to apply for the second opportunity if needs be. But certainly, it's always best to engage with something from the very beginning. So yeah, I'll be seeing you guys on ECI, and in the next 2 weeks, definitely there will be some very important Moodle activities around experiential learning, which is also, you know, how our experience will influence, or what we experience in the world, our subjective experience will influence definitely our knowledge and our skills and our beliefs, and therefore our behaviors. So learning from experience, in essence. And then also this very, very fascinating idea of dialogical learning. You know, so what is that dialogical? If we have a dialogue. So I know we all, in the English class, we were told to write dialogues, write a dialogue between, you know, basically when two people are talking, we call it a dialogue. But if you really go into it, it's actually not as simple as all that. A dialogue is a very specific form of talking. And one might argue co-constructing meaning. And so, yeah, the reason I'm bringing this up, Megan and Eleanor, I hope you're still listening, is, yeah, you guys have spoken to me via the media here, and Simon has mediated our conversation to a large extent by handling the technology for us in the background. And then, you know, I've been able to read your ideas and views and opinions. I hope I haven't misrepresented them, but certainly you guys were very clear in your writing. And then I added my 2 cents worth to that. So hopefully, you know, there's something more. So there's me on this side, and then what you guys have sent me. And then hopefully between what you've posted and what I've been thinking and sharing here, we've created something that approximates truth or knowledge, which we can take forward. Of course, in this case, to the purpose of really developing you guys as life orientation teachers. But another way of saying that would be to develop your role identity, you know, in the long run, as a teacher broadly, but more specifically as a life orientation teacher. All right, so I think if there's no other posts, I'm happy to leave it at this point. And from my side, I'm going to say thank you for participating. And then Simon, thank you for facilitating our, especially the last couple of minutes, our interaction there.
My pleasure, Hanno. Just before you sign off, one last question.
Go for it.
With respect to the assignment 2 submission, Megan would like to know, do you accept PDF format? And also, would you like students to include the rubric in the submission as they did previously for assignment 1?
All right, so I really generally don't have an objection to PDF. I just think it's, if you're going to put it into Turnitin, it's better to turn it in via Word. It actually creates its own format there. So I think Word is fine, submit it in your MS Word format. And then secondly, the second part of the question, no, you don't need to add the rubric this time because there's already an electronic rubric attached to the moment you submit. The Turnitin will attach a rubric, an electronic rubric for me to use in the assessment. So please, there's no need to, I don't think anything bad will happen if you do, but there's no need to attach it. It's fine.
Great, thanks so much, Hanno.
Thank you, Simon. And so I think that's me saying thank you to everybody and good evening, and I'll see you on ECI.